Some of the challenges this past year, we had plenty. They were significant, and I would honestly say probably one of the more challenging years from an environmental aspect that we've had through the growing conditions. So when you get into some of those environmental extreme conditions, uh, nobody breeds for those types of conditions like a polar vortex or rain so substantial that you don't harvest for 4 to 6 weeks after the crops mature. I don't know that anybody's varieties held up better than others, but I will say, despite that, the yields were fairly attractive, and but just unfortunate that we had some of those other situations to go along with it. I think from our national wheat yield contest contestants, they were still able to find some spots in the fields where they're going to be able to pull out some really high yields. Had customers that had products like 46.99 under irrigation. Uh, got several calls from guys, and these weren't just isolated. I mean, these were pretty wide areas across Oklahoma and even into Kansas, where irrigated yields of 46.99 were in excess of 110 bushels per acre. So those are exciting things. And then from a dry land perspective, even despite some of the challenges, 47.92 in the West is having a really solid year. And then 4401, a new product that we released this past year, it also is seeing some really good success. There's always key learnings, and I've had farmers express it this way: I've got 40 years of experience farming 1 year at a time. I think probably the worst thing that guys can do is set up a plan that reacts to the conditions that we saw this past year, because historically, I think this was an outlier. I don't know that we'll see the same types of situations that we saw this past year from an environmental perspective, but I think it does bring to attention some guys. I mean, we saw some heavy disease pressure this past year, and so I think that'll be on the forefront of guys' mind that, hey, you know what, maybe I need to budget in a fungicide because that the strain of stripe rust that we saw this past year, there was very few varieties from the WestBred perspective or even our competitors that saw complete resistance. So, I think those are things that make guys aware that, hey, maybe that's something I need to budget into my program and take into consideration moving forward. Because if you look at all of the issues that we had this past year, a lot of those are really out of people's control. There wasn't anything that the farmer did wrong. It was just Mother Nature. And so, but probably one of those that would be an exception to that would be, some of the heavy disease that we saw, and being proactive in putting a fungicide on to protect your crop from a disease like stripe rust. One thing I always encourage guys to do is hey, if you're sitting down and you're going to try to figure out which varieties that you want to plant, look at multi-year performance data for those varieties. Don't just look at a single year, because here again, you can get caught into years like this year where there may be some outliers. Try to look at 3 to 4 years worth of data if possible. Try to put a plan together that incorporates everything that you're going to do throughout the whole entire year. So, what I'm looking at there is hey, what varieties are we going to plant? What are the field conditions that I've got? Does that field have pH issues? Does it have weed issues that I need to recognize? Am I planting in behind corn? Am I planting in behind soybeans, wheat? What kind of planting date am I going to have? And put my fertility plan together as well. So I think, just being prepared, being proactive, and putting that whole entire plan together for the year, and budgeting in all those things that you feel like that you're going to need to do to have an excellent crop. Those are the key things that I think a producer can do to prepare for the next year.